Amazing, everyone. So welcome to the DigitalFutures office. It's such a pleasure to host you. So my name is Lisa, and today I'm going to talk to you about my journey with the Azure AI certification and hopefully give you some tips towards this exam. So first of all, let's see who. Is there anyone Azure AI certified at the moment? Anyone? That's actually great, because I was going to talk to you about how you can become Azure AI certified, so that's really great. Is anyone Azure certified? Yes, over here. Yes, over here. So we have a couple of people Azure certified, which is great. Is anyone considering becoming Azure AI certified? Yay, loads of hands, that's brilliant. And has anyone done certifications with any other providers like Google, AWS? Yes, some great hands coming up. Amazing. So I'm going to talk to you about my story. So I have a whole bunch of technical certifications. I'm quite proud of them. I'm a Google certified instructor, whole bunch of certs. I've always found them quite straightforward, quite enjoyable almost. And I had a goal, which was to become an Azure certified instructor. So I went ahead and I did the Azure AI associate exam. And oh my gosh, team, it was exceptionally hard. I want to say a big thank you to Ryan and Ed, who dealt with my exceptionally long rants in our team chat after the exam, where I complained incessantly about how challenging and difficult and slightly traumatizing this exam was. Good news, it was only because I didn't prepare properly. I had no idea what to expect with that exam. And that meant when I went into that exam, I found it difficult. I did pass, but I do not feel proud about the fact I passed. I don't feel like I deserved to pass based on how unprepared I was. So today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what those Azure exams are, which ones are we talking about, and then I'm going to share the things that I learned along the way. What do I wish I knew? And we've then got some top tips on passing, and not just passing the Azure exams, but also just passing any multiple choice certifications as well. So we're talking about the Azure AI certs. What are they? The first, we've got AI 900. This is the entry-level exam. This one, really straightforward. It's a 60-minute multiple choice exam, really straightforward, no real technical questions. You can take it and probably sit it after like a week of study. So we don't care about that one, easy peasy. This is the, I was going to say evil exam, that's a bit harsh. This is the difficult exam. It's associate level. So Azure exams have 3 levels of difficulty. The one we just went through, the fundamentals. Associate is a mid-level one, it's 2 stars. There is a professional level, but at the moment there is no professional level AI-specific exam. So this one here, it's 100 minutes long. It's out of 1,000, you need 700 to pass, and it is an exceptionally technical exam. It tests you on these 6 areas, and we'll go through those a little bit more in a moment, but they don't seem so bad. But wait, just you wait. They get bad for sure. So, what should you expect in the exam? So, a little bit of bad news. It is a very practical implementation. It is not an AI theory exam. There were no questions that were like, what is a large language model? Those questions I would have been able to just answer. These questions are really challenging. If you do a practice paper, in the practice paper you're going to have so many questions that say which service does X, Y, Z. This is a false sense of security. There will be 0 questions in your exam asking you which service does that thing. So I spent hours and hours on practice papers with questions saying, which service would you use for blah, blah, blah? None of that helped at all. So practice papers, ignore them. They are absolutely useless for this exam specifically. So this is an example of what a practice paper will put on there. This is actually one of the Microsoft practice papers. So if you go onto the website, the questions will look like this. Which AI vision feature should you use? And it'll give you some nice options. This will not come up on the real exam. The sort of questions you get on the real exam are a little bit more like this. On this niche API, which niche setting should you use for this niche thing? I'm pretty sure it's detection 03, but don't quote me on that because it's probably wrong. I don't know. I only got 77% on the exam, so clearly I don't know 23% of this material. But this is the sort of question you get, and actually normally this blurb is much, much longer. You also get questions like this, which doesn't seem so bad, but to get this correct, you need to have essentially memorized the 12 different colors that this API can detect. The answer here is teal, just in case you want to know. The rest are just not official colors enough. So, there's 3 core things that they are going to test your ability on. The first is really around your decision making. There will be a really complicated scenario, and you have to pick which service will solve that specific challenge. So there's going to be keywords which we will cover later. It might be like, they're looking for a cost-effective solution. And then you know not to pick the most expensive, most robust solution because it wouldn't fit that scenario. The next one, and possibly the most difficult, is configuring the services. So here you really need to know all of the parameters and all of the really specific settings for all of the different APIs. That one is absolutely killer, but there is one saving grace, which I'll share in a moment. The other thing is troubleshooting and limitations. So many of the questions were like, you have a model, it's not great, what should you do? And knowing the best parameters to change or what options you can do to improve the performance came up a lot. So the exam format itself is absolutely wild. If you've only done Google certifications and you've only done AWS certifications, when it comes to this one, it's absolutely going to blow your mind. They've put so much effort into their graphical user interface for taking exams. They have loads of different question types, and they absolutely love to use them. So you do get your bog standard multiple choice questions. They love the choose 3, choose 4, choose 5. Rarely do you just get to choose one. They also love their drag and drop questions. So you might have like 10 different steps. You have to pick the correct 4 steps and then put them in order. Those are my least favorite ones. They also have the complete the code questions. So they will show you a whole screen of either Python or C#, depending on which of those languages you chose. And then there will be drop-down boxes in the code. You need to select the correct option from the drop-downs for completing the code. So wild stuff. The good news is the exam is marked kindly. What do we mean by this? If you have to pick 3 and you get 2 out of the 3, you will get partial marks. You'll get 0.66% for that particular question. This is unlike AWS and Google. Google is very mean. If you get one part of it wrong, you've got the whole thing wrong. So good saving grace here is partial does get you points, which is good. Now, here's an interesting thing. Wild, and it blew my mind because I was so unprepared for this exam. So in the first section, you get normal questions, as you would expect. But then you have something called the problem solution set. And if you have any form of like anxiety about answering questions, you will absolutely hate this section. You only get to see the question one time, and then you have to answer it. Once you've answered it, you may not go back to it. And they show you about 3 or 4 of these in a row. And it's basically the same scenario each time. It gives you a solution, and it says, is this a valid solution? Yes or no. And once you go on to that next question, there's no going back. So if you realize the second one is right, but you've just said the first one's right, you cannot go back. It's exceptionally stressful. Whoever came up with that design of exam question, they're not nice people. After you've done all of that, you get to review it. You do not get to review your problem solution set. That was one time only. You do get to review the main questions. Now, if all of that was not stressful enough, you also have a case study. Case study has a bunch of reading and then about 5 or 6 multiple choice questions. Of course, once you've left section 1 and moved to section 2, you may not go back to section 1. So you have to save an appropriate amount of time for section 2, for the case study. If you move on too soon, you can't go back and change your previous answers. So do think about your timings with that one. So it's technically open book. You can visit the learn.microsoft.com documentation during the exams. You might be thinking, oh, okay, you can stop talking now, that's really easy. We can all just pass the exam immediately. I understand why you would think that, and that's probably because you've never visited the learn.microsoft.com documentation. It felt like a joke in the exam that they'd purposely hidden all of the information that I need. The search on this thing is just the worst search I've ever encountered in my life. If you type in Azure anywhere in your question, you will literally just get the Azure homepage as the only option that comes up at all. So if you are going to do this exam, I really recommend getting used to Learn and understanding how to get the best of it, how to find the answers. Definitely frustrating in an exam when you know the answer is there, you just don't know where on the documentation to click to find it. So getting used to the documentation, it's so key to success. Nice. I won't show you this. This is a sandbox where it shows you what to expect. So you actually get to do some practice questions, but they're silly questions. But it shows you how the exam interface works and acts, and it demonstrates how that problem set solution works, and it shows you how the case study works as well. So getting used to the interface is so key, because it means when you actually step into the real exam, you're going to be so much more prepared. I was not prepared, team. I was expecting the bog standard Google AWS interface where you just have a question and you click an answer. No. This bad boy, it's a whole different game. The interface is wild. The fact, I didn't really know that the documentation was going to be there in that way. When I clicked it and it popped up, I was like, oh my gosh, am I about to get disqualified? Like, what is going on? So yeah, definitely take time to get to know this. Nice. So when it comes down to timings, you are absolutely going to want to think about your time. You don't want to move on to the case study until you're absolutely ready. I reckon around 15 minutes for the case study, and the rest of your time you should spend in section 1. Nice. So how to prepare? What should you actually do? So there is a free certification pathway on Microsoft Learn. I would actually really recommend it. It's really hands-on, it's free, and there's lots of labs that will give you the actual knowledge that you need. Using the hands-on labs, they're really great. But the thing that got me through the exam was all of the things that I'd actually built. You have so many really specific questions on the APIs and things like that, and I only knew the answers because I'd tried to use those APIs and made all the mistakes and built things with it. There's a few recommended things. This is my list. This is not like an official list or anything. But Microsoft Learn and the documentation, great place to learn. There's loads of GitHub implementation samples as well. They're invaluable. And yeah, really building with Azure, amazing way to learn. There's a couple of things that are kind of mid-tier. So definitely there's some YouTube and blog resources that you can use. Microsoft will try to sell you the Measure Up practice exams. Again, these were not great. they're the ones that put me in that false sense of security. They made me think that I was going to be fine. I was not fine. They're way different to the real exam questions. They're so much more simple. On Udemy, there's some practice papers. Again, they were garbage. Highly would not recommend. But there are some Azure AI courses that I would recommend. Talking about garbage, there are exam dumps out there. They are banned if you use them. Microsoft will get very upset at you. But most practice exams, sorry for the imagery, it's not nice imagery. But yeah, most practice exams, we should avoid them. They're just not great. So there are 6 areas that you get tested on. There is a study guide on the website. So I'm not going to go through these in too many details, but for each of the 6 sections, there's quite a few different areas that you're meant to really build that expertise in. Microsoft Foundry is going to be the main one. It used to be called AI Studio, and then it was called Azure AI Foundry. Now it's simply called Microsoft Foundry. That is going to be the core part of the exam. But there's quite a lot of other parts you need to get into as well. There's quite a bit on agents. Oh, that was my weakest section, computer vision. Apparently I knew nothing. There is a section on old school NLP, which was great fun. I really enjoyed that section. And then this one, which is actually quite a lot. This is something like 30% of the exam. So getting to know these ones, they are quite important. There are a few things that you must learn in order to do this exam. One of them is the API call structures. I think I got about 6 questions on these. And this is that they will show you an API call. There's a whole bunch of drop downs, and you basically need to select the correct order for the API key. The other one is the service names, the features, and also the limitations. So what can each service do and what can it not do? These things, you really need to just know them and learn them. Please do not ask me any of them. I forgot them in the exam after I answered the question. The moment I moved on to the next question, I forgot everything I had ever learned about that previous thing. So there's a few things that you don't need to learn, which is quite nice. So you don't need to know any machine learning, that old school traditional machine learning. Those questions will not come up. This is a very generative AI focused exam. You don't need to know how to code an end-to-end solution in the entire app. You don't need to know any of the UI sequence clicks. In some Microsoft exams you do, and you actually have to go through a lab where you need to do it. These ones, you don't need that level of detail. You actually don't need to know much about large language models. When I went into this, I was a bit like, oh, I know loads about LLMs. That did not help me at all. This is an Azure exam. It is not an AI exam. It's all about knowing the specific services. One thing you won't see is loads of questions about the past. And they're actually live updating this exam very, very frequently. So you're not going to get old questions about previous models. One of the big challenges is they keep changing everything AI. So knowing what's in date and what's out of date. The Microsoft Foundry is a great example of this. A lot of material you see will still call it Microsoft AI Studio, the original name. It's now Microsoft Foundry. The exam may be a little bit out of date when you do it, so kind of learning the previous names and the current names is quite important. So really quickly, I'm now going to take you through some top tips on how to pass exams in general, not just this exam, but most exams. The first tip we have is go to the exam center. I feel like this is an actual picture from the exam center I normally go to because they use the oldest computer equipment you've ever seen. Literally, when I did this exam, there was still a ball in the mouse. It was that old school, didn't even have a laser. Do choose your exam center wisely. One of the ones in Reading is above a chicken shop, which is nice for afterwards. You can have a cheeky Nando's to celebrate or commiserate, but it is very loud and noisy. The one that I took the Azure exam in, again, it was on a very busy road, exceptionally noisy in there. I'm not sure there's a beautiful, quiet exam center anywhere in the world. If you find it, stick to it, because that is purely golden. You can sit the exam at home, but we really don't recommend it. You have to install quite a lot of software on your PC. They also proctor you via multiple cameras. You need to look at your phone and share around with your phone camera and a webcam. And the AI proctoring and person proctoring you can be very harsh as well. We've had people fail exams because they've glanced to the side and things like that. So if possible, go to an exam center. Next top tip, so multiple choice. When you get answers, notice the differences in the answers, right? Normally the answers are all quite similar, but there's a few little differences, so look for those differences. In Microsoft exams specifically, they normally put one wild card answer, the obviously wrong one. So if you can spot which is the obviously wrong one, they often just make up service names and things like that. Now, this one's semi a joke, and you can see that Ryan is laughing away. If in doubt, pick the longest one. This sounds silly, but often it's true. Obviously, if you know the right answer, pick the right answer. But once you've eliminated the obvious red herring, and you've looked for the other differences, and you've eliminated anything not Microsoft, going for the longest answer, honestly, it often is the right answer. This is only the last resort. I love it. So here is a top tip. This is a question we saw earlier. And one thing you might note is face detection is written in lowercase, whereas image analysis is written in uppercase or title case. Same here for OCR, it's all lowercase. One thing to note is whenever Microsoft refer to one of their services or features, they always use title case with upper characters, right? So which Azure AI Vision feature? So we're looking for a feature. Features always have capital letters. So we can just immediately ignore face detection, and we can ignore optical character recognition. We could have ignored them because they're just not right, but we also know to ignore them because they're not capitalized. They can't possibly be the answer. It doesn't fit the pattern. The other clue here was then video feed detecting people. That makes it spatial analysis. Image analysis would just be a single image, whereas spatial analysis is for video. So always look out for that. Yeah, the other thing is it's a Microsoft Azure exam. So if there is an option that says use open source, that is absolutely not the answer. If there's something that suggests using a third party, again, does not fit the whole Microsoft Azure aesthetic. If it's use Microsoft Azure options, yes, we love that. Oh, that's true for the Google and the AWS exams. It's always going to be the Google option or the AWS option. I highly recommend reading the story or the blurb last. So when you see the question, start by reading the answers. Check there first. Then read the question, and then read the whole story bit. The story blurb is normally really, really long, really boring, and really unnecessary. If you skip it, it can save you so much time. Here is an example. So we've got 3 options here in the answers, so we can read them, and immediately we know that this is an Azure text analyzer API question, because these are the options. Here is the question. This actually does not help us, but now we know that we're looking for a feature within the API. So now when we read the blurb, we can immediately discount the top bit, and we can see, oh, we're getting negative sentiment, but it's meant to be positive. Something's gone wrong. It must be opinion mining equals true. Because we know that this one is about privacy. This one is about how to count strings. So it must be this one here. So if you start doing it kind of reading the answers, then the question, by the time you're reading the blurb, you know what keywords you're looking out for. Love it. Time management. Now this one's really important. There is a lot of information in these exams, especially the case study. So I recommend do a first pass. Do not open the documentation at all. It is such a rabbit hole. You don't want to spend 20 minutes searching for the answer to question 1. Just go through, do all of the questions, and use the flagging option. So there's an option to flag questions for review. So if you don't know the answer, flag it, move on. Then you'll have an understanding of how much time you've got left, how many questions you now need to explore and understand. Then you can go through, do a second pass, this time use the documentation depending on how much time you've got left. Love it. Learning the keywords. So this is really important. In the questions, you often have keywords. It's going to be things like minimize cost, reduce latency. And when you get those questions, it's almost a one-to-one mapping of the things you are looking for. There's certain services which are much cheaper and some services that are known for being really expensive. So if it says minimize cost, you know it's going to be one of the ones known for being cheaper, and so on. Amazing. Fun little secret, whenever there's a few different Azure services, it's typically going to be the most recent one or the newest one. They love their shiny new toys. If it's which NLP technique should I use, and one option is the old school version, and one is like the latest, newest Gen AI option, it's clearly the latest, newest Gen AI option. Yeah, so a little bit of a study guide. Do learn what all of the services actually do and their limitations. Go ahead and just build something, use the services, put them into practice. Do test yourselves on the scenario questions. I found that large language models were actually quite good at generating really realistic exam questions, unlike the practice exams. Definitely review things like quotas, regions, and limits. I had a lot of questions which were like, what is the correct format of a region, which really threw me. Luckily, that was quite an easy one. And definitely do try to do a full timed exam. Even if the questions aren't realistic, it is just good to have a practice at focusing for 100 minutes, because we're all so used to short form content these days that really focusing up for that long can be quite challenging. So just get into that mindset of being in exams. Overall, do remember, it's not really testing if you can build AI solutions, it's testing if you know how Azure AI thinks you should build AI solutions, because those things are quite different. Overall, thank you so much. And if you do sit this exam or any other exams, good luck. But thank you all so much.